So we see, all right, great law, forcing states to recognize other people's licenses, permits. We see this law has teeth to it. I mean, that's one of the things we look at as lawyers. You can write whatever down in the law, but if it doesn't have any way to an enforcement mechanism, well, guess what? It's not worth the paper it's written on. We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're going to be talking about national reciprocity, also known as HR 38. Now, this is one of those deals where we got some movement on this at the beginning of the year. It's kind of stalled out. What is the Congress doing? We're going to be talking about the substance of this, where we are now, and what we can be doing to push this stuff forward. And this actually came from a question, one of y'all's questions. And sometimes we do these in episodes with lots of questions, but we got this enough that I think we need to make this a standalone episode. This was from BJ George, 170. Greetings. My question is if universal carry is going to pass, or is this a pipe dream? We're going to be answering that question and so much more. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And today's video is sponsored by Aura. Hey, you want to see something crazy? I just Googled Edwin Walker. Is your address?
What? How did you know that?
In your phone number? It's also listed here. I know it, but it's 7.
Where are you getting this? I try to keep that information absolutely secret from everybody.
It's scary how easy it is to Google someone and find out their private information. Home address, phone number, email, and more. These sites are run by data brokers who collect your information, package it, and sell it to anyone. Marketers, scammers, identity thieves, all without your consent. They're legally required to take your data down if you ask, but they bury you in the process in legalese and in endless forms, hoping that you'll give up. Or you can do what we do, use Aura. Aura finds these data brokers, submits opt-out requests on your behalf, and keeps working in the background to keep you protected. After a few weeks, you'll stop seeing your information on these sketchy sites. Aura also monitors the dark web for your email, phone number, and even social security number. If someone tries to use your information to get into your bank or credit accounts, Aura will alert you fast. And if the worst happens, Aura has your back with up to $5 million of identity theft insurance with their 24/7 US-based fraud team to help. It also comes with top-tier VPN, password manager, malware protection, internet parental controls, and real-time credit monitoring. Aura protects your identity, money, and peace of mind. Go to aura.com/armedattorneys to try a 14-day trial for free. That's enough time for Aura to start scrubbing your personal information from all those data broker sites automatically. All right, Edwin Walker, what does national reciprocity mean to you?
Well, national reciprocity means to me that if you have a license issued by your state, then you should be allowed to carry concealed or, my opinion, unconcealed
Looking at you, Florida.
in any state that agrees to be part of this union. Just like your driver's license allows you to drive an automobile in every state in the union, why can't your concealed or just your handgun license be used as a permit to carry in every state? Because, we have full faith and credit, we have interstate compacts. Why is this any different?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, for those folks who live in ivory towers who are guarded, they don't have, defense privilege. They don't think about having to defend themselves, and so it's not a high priority to them. But for the rest of us here on planet Earth, I would like the ability to be able to defend myself, my family, no matter where I am. And so that's where HR 38 comes in. We have right now 188 sponsors and co-sponsors and author. So that's a huge chunk of the the House. So that's a huge deal. But the substance of this law is just that. Hey, guess what? Other states, you got to recognize if you issue a license, you got to recognize other states' licenses, give reciprocity to these things. There's actually a pretty interesting mechanism because when you look at federal defenses, and ultimately that's what this is, the federal mechanisms are probably some of the strongest worded defenses I've ever seen. And when I say, being able to assert these defenses, think about things like the Firearm Owners Protection Act that says, hey, guess what? Legal start, legal finish, traveling firearm unloaded, encased, or otherwise inaccessible. You should theoretically not be getting charged with gun crimes in these gun hostile states that don't recognize the Second Amendment or your right to keep and bear arms. But how does that practically, as just mechanically, how does that come up in a courtroom? Well, you assert the Firearm Owners Protection Act defense at your trial. So in the meantime, you're charged with a gun crime, showing up to court every month, you go to trial, and then the jury gets instructed on this defense. So your life is very disruptive. Compare that with HR 38, and it's pretty stinking good. I think we should just read that.
Yeah, the drafters of this legislation have clearly learned from the mistakes or the inadequacies of the Firearms Owners Protection Act because, yeah, New Jersey's notorious for prosecuting people, and the courts have said, hey, you got to put your case forward to show that you received the benefit of this act, but we're still going to prosecute you. You're still going to have to hire a lawyer. You're still going to have to stress out about trial. And then, our state's full of anti gun folks. So they'll probably hate you and deny you the coverage of your defense. So the crafters of this legislation have anticipated that. It's very interesting because, you're right, I put on my glasses here. Here in subsection C, a person who carries or possesses a concealed handgun in accordance with subsections A and B may not be arrested or otherwise detained for a violation of any law or any rule, regulation, state, or any political subdivision thereof related to the possession, transportation, or carrying of firearms, unless there is probable cause to believe that the person is doing so in a manner not provided for in this section. And there's some things like you can't violate private property laws, and public buildings are still off limits, things like that. Presentation of facially valid documents as specified in subsection A is prima facie evidence that the individual has a license or permit as required by this section.
And that document is the license or permit to carry a handgun.
Exactly. 2, when a person asserting this section as a defense in a criminal proceeding, the prosecution shall bear the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the conduct of the person did not satisfy the conditions set forth in subsection A and B. So even if they have detained you and they now have to have probable cause that you carried into a public building or you carried onto private property when you told you couldn't, now the burden then is on the state to prove that your defense doesn't apply. And then 3, when a person successfully asserts this section as a defense in a criminal proceeding, the court shall award the prevailing defendant a reasonable attorney fee, which is something that's often debated just in the general criminal law. Because there's lots of people that are falsely accused and they say, well, God, I still have to defend myself.
Yeah, or even you kicked down and broke my door frame. Like, can you pay me for my door?
Yeah, and even if there's a case, which I've had several, where the jury comes back and acquits the person in less than 10 minutes. Less than 10 minutes. A state's case was so frivolous that all the jury did was go in, read the jury charge, pick a foreman, take the first vote. Everybody votes not guilty, but yet the guy is still out the money that they had to pay for the attorney's fees. So where's the justice in that?
No. So we see, all right, great law, forcing states to recognize other people's licenses, permits. We see this law has teeth to it. I mean, that's one of the things we look at as lawyers. You can write whatever down in the law, but if it doesn't have any way to an enforcement mechanism, well, guess what? It's not worth the paper it's written on. And so this has a fantastic enforcement mechanism. So where are we at right now? Well, HR 38 has been reported out of the House Judiciary Committee. That was on March the 25th, 2025. Again, we got that 188 sponsor, co-sponsor, author combination here. And what's the next step for this? Well, the next step is it would go to the House clerk. Potentially maybe it goes on a union calendar, maybe it doesn't, maybe it goes through the rules process to figure out debate, all these other things. That would be theoretically the next step in this. So it's been stalled for quite a few months. Now, what is the House doing right now? A whole lot of nothing. They're effectively in recess doing these pro forma sessions where they go in, say, any objection to us, recessing to the next day and just keeping these things rolling.
Ask for unanimous consent to.
Yeah, that's basically. If you've watched one of these things, the House is in session for minutes every single day. It's absolutely ridiculous. And at that point, it would go to the floor for consideration. Now, this has had progress in past sessions. Part of me thinks, to answer the question of the original person, is this a pipe dream? I don't think it's a pipe dream. Does it pass as a standalone bill because the Congress doesn't really do that anymore? The Congress passes a budget. The House and Senate get together. They come up with a budget. That's basically the only thing that gets done. So, there is a reduced chance that this passes as a standalone bill. And I do have one tip because the House isn't really meeting. But we'll talk about that in a second. What do you got?
Well, I'm just considering. So, yeah, if it passes the House, then it will go to the Senate, go through the same process. As the Senate then goes to, we all remember the I'm Just a Bill,
Yeah.
Schoolhouse Rock. It's exactly what would happen. So, what I'm considering is that so you take your hardcore anti-gun states, California, New York, New Jersey, Hawaii. What is their response to this? Do they just repeal their licensing schemes altogether? Since that seems to be the main condition, is that you can only carry in states that do in fact issue their own license. Do these states just now say, because that's not unprecedented. Vermont doesn't have a licensing scheme.
No.
So nobody's called Vermont on the carpet and say, hey, Vermont, you got to get a licensing scheme. So California just says, hey, we're like Vermont. We don't have a licensing scheme. But instead of defaulting to everybody gets to carry, we default to we're going to put in so many restrictions that effectively nobody gets to carry. And we don't have to pay attention to this national reciprocity.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, that would be a protracted legal battle over a lifetime, is what that sounds like, is what you just described. Now, going back to what can folks do to make these things happen? Well, because our representatives are not effectively there right now, the strategy changes just a little bit. Typically when you see folks talk about, hey, call your representative, blow up the phones, tell them to take action on these things. When you hear those calls to action, it's really important that you act on that, because I'll tell you, when the reps are in their offices and their phones, are ringing off the hook and their mailboxes are getting full, that stuff does move the needle. But in a part of kind of the environment we're in right now, calling the district office is actually kind of the little change in strategy that I'd recommend, because if folks aren't in, not in DC, well, they're at their district, or I know a lot of folks are out traveling around doing business, for the United States, but the district office is the place to call.
Oh, yeah. And what's that old statistic we hear that one phone call equals the point of view of 1,000 constituents or something like that?
Well, and, and we talk about this in the Texas house, phone call, or email, kind of meaningless. Phone call, it's probably like 10 emails. In-person visit is probably like 15 to 20 phone calls. So, I mean, if you know any of these reps, if they're having town hall meetings or things like that, I mean, that's the time to talk to them. Don't harass them too much if they're already signed on to this. We've already won those folks. Don't waste our energy there. But there are some holdouts, because there's more than 188 Pro 2A people inside the House of Representatives.
One would hope.
Yeah, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video. And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys. But when he reacts, he tells a joke, and when he reacts, he goes... and then he starts laughing. That's what... I need you to not react like a slob. I'm a director, you're the actor. Get into the space.
Sure.
You're at the Papados. It's a beautiful day. You sit down. They already unfolded the bread, and you can see it. They hand you a menu. You graciously accept it and say, thank you very much. You open it up.
But I know I'm getting the crawfish trio.
It's removed off the menu, and there's a note at the bottom of the menu saying, we will not serve a crawfish trio.
Can I do that reaction?
Right, sure.